I'm trying to say that there's a reason women behave the way they do, and it's good. It's just not, you don't want to go to war against children, and you don't want to mother polities. It's pretty obvious. But unfortunately, what's happened is, in to some degree, we've demonstrated what happens when women get to mother a polity, and it's turned out to be catastrophic. Now we have to recognize what happens now when women mother a polity: infantilization.
Okay.
We've let this happen. And one of that you could say it, the positive way to look at it is we've run a test. That test of female inclusion has turned out to show that women's intuitions are not, women have not yet got the norms, traditions, and values necessary to control their intuitions when applied to a polity.
My impression is that the since 1965 approximately, the war on poverty, the welfare state, is the expression of the failure of infantilization of the populace or the polity.
Correct.
Is that what you're referring to? Yep. That was for the audience more than for you, Kurt.
Thank you. And it really got worse under Obama, which is where this 90s shit came from. And so this whole woke and whatever, it's just really gotten out of hand. And if you read Jonathan Haidt and what's his name's book, Coddling of the American Mind, 2000.
Yes.
And so in that book, he and whoever this guy is that brought him the idea, because it wasn't his original, is that the two of them worked on it. And they said, well, it begins with this overprotectionism. And I'm like, well, that's true. Women, female overprotectionism got out of hand in the 90s. But that had to do with the things that were set up before that, creating an environment where women felt like they needed to be overprotective. And then the woke movement builds from there on top of it. So, and then the white women captured the woke movement, and Jesus, it's just gotten.
There's a progression there that I want to pursue a little bit.
Marxism, neo-Marxism, postmodernism, anti-male feminism, political correctness, and woke, and it's just the same attempt to create an oppression narrative in order to resist the demand that people join the majority middle class society by adopting majority middle class responsibilities. And they don't want to. They don't want to, and partly they can't. Worse, if you take women and make them single mothers, they definitely can't. So you're going to get, so it's not just that there's this female, cognitively female ideology of oppression out there, rather than the long march to domesticate human beings from barbarians into civilized people, and from civilized people into majority middle class people who are, by virtue of being majority middle class, responsible for self, family, assets, commons, and polity, which is what we want, majority responsible society, is that they're retaliating against that, because responsibility is effort. It's cognitive work, it's emotional work, it's adversarial and competitive. Now, the counter proposition, the one I argue with, is that that in the ancient world, through all of history, we've had barbarians, slaves, serfs, freemen, citizens, and sovereigns. And those are basically a hierarchy of what you can be responsible for. A slave is basically responsible for nothing except whatever he's assigned. A serf is responsible for feeding himself, but his work is apportioned. Freeman, his work is apportioned, and he's responsible for feeding, housing himself, it's whatever. A citizen is responsible for the organization of some sort of production, meaning other people who are equally responsible for themselves, their production. And a sovereign is responsible for the organization of those people who are citizens. So it's just a hierarchy of responsibility, but given one's demonstrated competency. So it's just parenting, which is what they call paternalism. And if they want to call paternalism parenting or adulting, I don't know what the heck, or governing or ruling, I don't know what the difference is. It just means we organize society by what you're capable of and willing to be responsible for.
It's not paternalism. It's close. They call it the patriarchy.
Yeah, it's called responsibility. And what do we say women's primary driver is? It's the evasion of responsibility, so that their responsibility is limited only to that which is under their empathic control, meaning themselves and their children. And even then, they eschew responsibility at all costs. What do you think the whole point of hypergamy is? Is evading responsibility. So the thing is, men need to demonstrate competency, and women are intrinsically valuable. And so as such, men seek responsibility as a demonstration of competency, which is why our men are frustrated today, is because they have no means of getting responsibility, because the economy has been sufficiently outsourced that men who have don't have the ability to manage capital can't manage self and work and family. So basically, you're screwing our freemen.
Yes.
So whereas women are basically avoiding responsibility, and even everything you think of, even when they say they're trying to care for someone, they're avoiding the responsibility of having to feel that person's feelings. I mean, they were always avoiding responsibility. What we want, of course, is women who have enough children to develop the equivalent of male judgment of responsibility, so they can dismiss the difference between that is which is actionable and that is which is not. So, I mean, women need to learn the four agreements, and they need to learn the simple messages: what is within my control? If it's within my control, then I should worry about it. If it's outside of my control, I shouldn't worry about it. If it's without my control and my competency, I should not even have an opinion about it. The problem is, we have an awful lot of women. It is outside their maturity and outside their competency, and they are expressing political interests. Why? Because some people, we call the credentialed classes, who are equally irresponsible for production, distribution, and trade, safety, production, distribution, are being promising these people that they don't have to be responsible. Whereas instead, what we need is we need to produce sections of the economy, sectors of the economy that serve the ability for people to hold different levels of responsibility. Does that mean a return to serfdom and slavery? No, but it does maybe return to public workforces and of two different kinds. One in which you have some freedom to choose what work you do, and others which you don't. And so we have to find some way to make people useful and responsible, because otherwise they seek to justify their irresponsibility, and they will use the political system, the openness of our trifunctional political system, to chase after the approval and leadership of people who tell them they don't have to adapt and improve, which basically means the left. When I say women are irresponsible, are men responsible for children? No, they're not. We don't take into consideration the adaptive cost of impulse and emotion. Women do, and so they take this into account. And the problem is that they don't say they try to evade responsibility for assisting people in adaptation, instead of saying, I recognize this and taking responsibility for helping people adapt. And so this is why women cause decline in competitive decline in all organizations, is because the purpose of competition and pressure is to cause you to take initiative and responsibility for your own adaptation to change. What women are doing is they're trying to soften or eliminate the need for individuals to adapt to change. And then the result is they produce infantilization, which as a result produces the inability to compete, because what we are trying to train everybody to do is to cooperatively compete, co-opetition. That's the whole point of Western Civ, is we push responsibility down to the maximum.